Hey everybody, welcome to Nutri-iQ Radio, where we talk about all things food, fitness and feeling good. I'm your host Sean Hare, and this week we've got a very special guest interview. In this week's show, Nutri-iQ founder Jim Gale is interviewing his dad. Last month, Jim's dad celebrated 30 years sober, a huge achievement for which I had the honour of putting together a video from his family as they couldn't be there with him due to the lockdown restrictions. As you can imagine, this is a very personal interview between Jim and his dad, and we're honoured that he agreed to open up and tell his story of sobriety on the show. I'll not give any more away, I'll let them do the talking. Enjoy.
Hello, mate.
Hi, mate. How's it going?
I'm good, thank you, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Nice. Just come back from a nice holiday.
Where was you?
Week away, North Wales.
Lovely. Was there no big old restrictions there? They've been quite tight, haven't they?
Only in the south of Wales, apparently.
Oh, is it? So you was all right?
In the north, it was fine. Just the usual face masks and things like that.
Yeah.
When you go into shops, but it was the usual thing. I think they're more bothered sort of the Cardiff,
Right.
Newport down there.
Fair
But yeah, we had a good break. I was ready for it. So
good, mate. Yeah, it's well deserved. So you come in live from the man shed today.
on the man cave, that's the one.
From the man cave. Sorry, yeah.
Still not
Ready?
completely finished, but we're getting there.
Getting there, mate. Yeah. Every time I come to visit, it looks a little bit better. Most times. So as long as no one's leaving windows open and flooding it out.
Just a bit at a time. No.
What was that, mate? Sorry.
We'll be able to do a bit more to it soon.
You're going to have to beat the weather, aren't you? Or is it just the inside that needs doing now?
It's more inside. Yeah, all the outsides sorted. I just got to paint the decking, but yeah, so all my meetings go on in here now. So
We're all in the same boat, mate.
Yeah.
All right. So the idea of this today, for getting you on the show, is we obviously, as a nutrition company, I myself and Sean as coaches, we always advise people on the benefits of cutting out alcohol for their health and sort of fat loss and stuff like that. We're not really going to touch on that too much today. That's kind of a topic for a different day. We've got Stoptober coming around the corner, which is where people are sort of encouraged to stop drinking for a whole month. And obviously people see like crazy benefits from it, health-wise, mentally, psychologically, in results with going to the gym. Obviously on our end, that's what we see quite a lot. So we encourage Stoptober. I've seen nothing but good things come from it. So you're now 30 years sober. Congrats. And we thought it'd be cool to get your perspective more, I guess like a deeper input, because obviously we do talk about quite, I guess, superficial things about it. So like most of my clients want fat loss. So if I'm ever talking about alcohol, it's, there's this many calories in alcohol, or, when you have a big weekend, it throws you off for the rest of the week. So obviously it's not considered superficial to their goals, but there is obviously much deeper side to alcohol and to alcoholism, obviously. So we thought it'd be really cool to get your perspective on it, get a little bit of your history and experience, and maybe some advice as well for people.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Whatever else, I always say whatever else. If anything helps somebody else, then that's a good thing,
Awesome.
a positive thing. So
Cool. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel like when I'm coaching people, a lot of times I end up thinking like you could have an issue there. You know, I'm always laughing and joking with clients about it, and most of the time it is just sort of laughing and joking, and well, I had a big weekend, blah blah blah. But sometimes I do find myself thinking like,
yeah,
you got like this is like an issue. Not that I'm an expert on it, but yeah. So
yeah,
it obviously it's quite
yeah,
a common thing, and I think people listening will definitely um, take something away from it. You know, like you said, whatever helps.
yeah.
Cool. So we're going to
Yeah,
start.
I think that's
Sorry,
right. Yeah, sorry.
we're a little bit delayed, I think, so we might end up
Oh,
interrupting each other a little bit. Yeah, yeah. But go on. What was you going
okay.
to say?
Just picking up on, I don't think it takes a lot to recognise whatever field you're in, or whatever you like, you with fitness and nutrition, and people in other areas of life. We often come across people when they start talking, or we know about, could just be friends, and things sometimes are obvious, the way that they talk, and the way that they might justify, whether it's drinking, or whether it's nutrition with eating, or whatever. But you often pick up on people justifying their actions sometimes. It's not always, it's subtle, but you can see it in some people. I don't think it takes a lot to see it sometimes. Sometimes it's quite obvious. But you have to be really careful. You can't, jump in and say something.
Yeah.
I think I think there's a kind of just a social skill to it. The last thing that somebody wants, who might have a problem somewhere in an area of their life, is somebody else to just barge in and give them advice straight off the youth. So it takes a little bit waking in with some people. It's just a matter of getting to know people. And it's only, at the end of the day, it's only your experience or my experience. That's all we have to go on. We're not experts in anything.
Yeah.
I speak for myself.
Cool.
But yeah, you can see it often. I often see it when I talk to friends or whatever. And we come from a culture that's alcohol's quite a big part of our culture.
Yeah.
In the UK.
Yeah.
As opposed to the French, the Italians, other parts of Europe, it's different. It seems different. It's a different way.
Do you think that we've spoke a little bit about this in the past? Do you think that it's in the sort of prohibition of it in youth, like it only is anecdotal for me, but it seems like people who their parents were a little bit looser on rules around alcohol when they were younger actually grow up not being big drinkers, and then people that were kind of kept away from it, or prohibited kind of from having it, end up just in more cases. But like I said, it's only anecdotal. Do you think that is the case?
I think that's a part of it. It can be a part of it, like anything. Doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be anything. I think sometimes when we're forced away from something, there's a part of us that wants to know, why. I think that's why information is vital to children and latent teenagers. That information is vital. That people are open, about the effects of things without being judgmental about their actions. I think there's a lot there's a lot in that, but there is definitely, yes, that's an aspect, I think, in a lot of us, you know. But it is ingrained. Alcohol is ingrained in our culture, which I think is a bigger aspect. So regardless of what happens, maybe with your parents or your teachers when you're younger, we come out into a culture. We're surrounded by it. So it could just be where you land and the kind of influences you have around you, especially when it comes to peers. You know, some of us are so. I know in my own experience, when I was younger, I was easily influenced by what I thought were stronger personalities, people that seemed to, you know, they had charisma and they just seemed to lead, you know. And that's something I've come to find out about myself is I'm easily influenced. So I tend to go down that. I'm not saying that's a whole picture, but especially with my own experience with alcohol is, you know, yeah, just I mean, I'm easily influenced, that's it.
Yeah. And okay, so going back then, do you remember your first ever drink?
Not specifically. I remember in a field drinking cider with my mates before we went to like a what we call a disco then, you know. The local
I've heard of them, yeah.
Down local chick, all it was.
Yeah.
But what I do remember for me is it just was transformative. And a lot of people will probably say the same thing who have not had trouble later in life, you know, and that have maybe evened off, you know, be able to drink socially without getting in trouble. But for me, my earliest recollections are that alcohol basically changed my perception of reality almost instantly, which is a big hook. When something does that for you, if it does that for you, you know, somebody said to me once, if something does that for you, like changes your perception of reality to that extent, eventually it's going to start taking things from you, you know. And that's exactly what happened. But going back to your question, yeah, you know, I was only 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
But I can remember the effect it had on my psyche was, so I just looked, so I was looking for that same effect every time.
And so you say it obviously instantly changed your perception of reality.
Oh, almost instantly, yeah.
Right. And did you at the time understand why then it was so appealing? Like, it makes perfect sense if it alters your perception of reality and that is in the moment a seemingly better reality. But yeah. did like, how long did it take you to realize that it wasn't just the thrill of the booze, it was like something deeper than that?
Not for me, not until like a lot later when I got help.
Right.
I didn't really connect the dots then. I just knew that when I had a drink, I changed. Something in me changed. But there wasn't I didn't connect the dots to the point where, oh, that, you know, this could be a problem.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a problem for a long, long time. And that, I think that's the case with a lot of people who get in trouble with it, is if we recognised it early enough, you would have probably done something about it when there was time.
Yeah.
But for me, alcoholism, that's the baffling part about it, is that it takes too much away from you before. For me, and a lot of people, you know, that I've met and talked to about this disease, and I think it is a disease. I believe that. Somebody said dis-ease, like a dis-ease. We tend to think about disease as something It was just a dis-ease. That's all. That just seemed to hit home to me that when I drank and it worked, there was no dis-ease anymore. I was at perfect ease and comfort with everything and everybody. And I'm not saying I was higher or lower. It made me equal to everything. I felt as if I just fitted in, you know.
Right.
There's a saying that says, I felt 2 pints short of feeling normal. And that's how I always, and although it's funny, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
It felt I was just a couple of pints short of feeling normal. And until I'd had a drink. But the rationale behind it was, hey, all my mates are doing the same. Everybody that I drank with, they all drank like I did, or I thought that anyway.
Yeah.
So it hides itself in normality. That's our drinking culture again. Alcoholism hides itself. It looks normal. It looks like a normal life to be living.
Yeah. And
you know, we might from families that drink like that as well, you know, but not necessarily got in trouble. We might have family members that we know who drink a bit, but have not necessarily got in trouble from it. So
yeah. So it's not. I think like a conception of mine that you broke quite early on was that alcoholism is just volume of alcohol. Like when I was younger, that's just what straight away I thought was, if you're an alcoholic, you drink a lot of alcohol. That's it.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not how much you're drinking. It's why.
Yeah, it's the effect. For me personally, it's a bit of a myth that it's all about quantities. Although a lot of alcoholics drink a huge amount of alcohol, but I know that I used to drink with people that could drink a lot more than I drank. But apparently, in the morning they just got up and went to work, and they weren't thinking about having a drink in the morning, you know. Whereas alcohol for me, once it got its claws in me, I wasn't getting up in the morning and thinking about work. I was thinking about how can I feel at ease again, and so I can work.
Yeah.
You know, when I started drinking in the mornings, and that was not my experience for a long time, but in the last couple of years, that's what I was doing. I was looking for a drink in the morning, not because I wanted to get drunk, because I just wanted to feel at ease and comfort. And apparently, I drank with people who didn't necessarily feel like that. They just drank because it did what it said. It says it relaxed them, and they was able to maybe let their hair down a lot in some cases. But for me, I can only, I personally call it a disease of perception. It's a disease of perception, meaning that if it changes your perception that much, then it's danger signs, you know, because the mind just wants to, it's like that euphoric recall. The mind wants, even though the evidence says, look, your life's going down the toilet quick and things are happening and things are being taken away from you, the mind has that euphoric recall button in it that goes, maybe, just maybe this time, I can drink. If I find the right amount to drink or the right people to drink with, or the mind's always looking, the alcoholic mind is always looking to justify that next drink. And it's because it worked for me at one time. You know, anybody who says they didn't have a good time drinking who is an alcoholic, well, it don't make any sense to me. That why would you drink? You know,
What's you talked earlier about recognizing quite easily in people when they are justifying. What justifications did you make was like your sort of favorites earlier on before you really like recognized it?
Maybe the old one that a working man. There's nothing wrong with a working man having a drink.
Mm.
If you can't have a drink, you know, something wrong in the world, that kind of thing. And I suppose it goes along with that culture that I hid in. That it was easy to hide in that culture. That's a general rationalisation in that culture, is that that's what we do. You know, if you can't have a day's work and then go for a pint, you know, we grow up in a country that says one of the biggest thing a father can do is take his son for a drink when he's 18 years old down to the local boozer. Or it used to be years ago, not so much now, but it was like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take you for a pint for a couple, you know. I'm sure a lot of foreigners look at us gone out with that kind of thing, you know.
Mm.
So why should that be a rite of passage, you know?
Yeah, it's weird.
You know, why not go, what about going hiking with, you know, with dad, you know? Oh, we did our first, you know.
They could always send us out to hunt a bear, couldn't they? Like,
yeah.
what happened to that?
Yeah. Depends where you live, I suppose.
Yeah.
Live in Canada, maybe somewhere like that. But yeah, so I think justifications are a big part of illnesses like that.
Yeah.
Addictions like that. Justifications. The ism, the disease within us, and with me, was just don't want to be found out. It don't want to be. It don't want to be found out. It don't want to be found that it's a failed. That it's a fail going wrong. It don't want to be found out. So I don't think we lie either. I think we bullshit. What we do is bullshit. And I've got a good friend who says there's a difference between bullshit and lying. Is that when you're bullshitting, you actually believe the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Whereas when you lie, you know you're lying. And I think with addicts and alcoholics and anybody with an addiction, I think they do a lot of that. They're bullshitting themselves, and then they start feeding it out, and sometimes it takes a bullshitter to know a bullshitter. I think that gets back to, you know, everybody to a degree wants to put an image out to the world of they want people to, this is the image I want you to see.
Yeah.
And I think everybody does that to a degree on a scale.
Yeah.
I think that addicts, alcoholics, that it's accentualized. Do you know what I mean? It's it's magnified.
Yeah.
You know, and the bullshit becomes so thick, you know, that it's like you can't even remember where you started with it and where you finished.
Yeah.
You're living a life that is. James, I'm going to have to just charge my phone up.
Yeah, go on, you're right. We'll cut this a little bit, that's fine.
Your...
Apologies for the cut. But yeah, so I was saying that desire to basically create your own image of how you want people to see you, and then just kind of force that out into other people's perception of you, and that's amplified in people who are addicts.
I think so. In my experience, yeah. It's just it's a bit further up the scale.
So
we're all flawed, aren't we? So
yeah, and I see what you're saying about, obviously with social media is like a really good example of how I think it's shone a light on how much people want to be seen in a certain way, and how they present themselves kind of wanting to be seen in that way. It's a highlights reel, social media, and really that's exactly just the same. Everything in life is a highlights reel. You're not the same person at home that you are in a formal setting or in work, or even with friends. Like, there are levels of yourself that you'll allow to be seen, or levels of yourself that don't exist, but you materialize for the sake of other people. And so do you think that people that have more of a tendency to be like that are typically tend to become addicts? Or are you saying that there's something about being an addict that makes you want to sort of give a false perception of yourself to hide it?
I think generally, like we said earlier, everybody is on that scale to a degree. Well, what makes them an addict, become an addict, is really hard to say. I don't think anybody can really. I think there's a school of thought out there that says genetics has a lot to do with it as well.
Right.
There's like the makeup in us, that some are more susceptible biologically as well as mentally. There's a biological factor in there somewhere where enzymes are produced enough in the in the liver. There's different schools of thought about that. It's very difficult to say who would go on to become an addict. But I think the one thing that is true right across the board is that everybody presents some kind of persona.
Yeah.
Some are really grounded, and it's not much a persona. What you see is what you get. You get that with some people. They're very grounded, but definitely people that are finding that they need to present an image more. There's a good case to say, there's a good chance they could. That takes some. For me, that took some effort to constantly be trying to be somebody that I wasn't, or constantly that feeling when I was sober. See, drinking was not my problem. Sobriety was my problem, in waking up every day and feeling feeling it, not just insecure, like you didn't fit. There's a lyric, Pink Floyd lyric, an earthbound misfit. Like there's something missing, like you just don't fit anywhere. And for me, when I had a drink, I fit. And it's not rocket science. If it does that for you, then there's a good chance, that could get out of control.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people have actually recognised that in themselves and stopped it before it does, maybe. It's just my experience that didn't happen. But it's only looking back. It's only when I look back where I see where pieces fit.
Yeah.
And because I never, in the problem, you never see the problem when you're in the problem. You need to be taken out of it and put in a different place. That's what I believe happened with me, is that I was placed somewhere else and was able to see what had happened.
So what was that process of? Well, first of all, do you remember, like, was there like a click moment where you realized that you were actually in trouble with it, and it wasn't, the justifications sort of became transparent to you? Was there a moment there that happened?
I don't I don't think there was one specific moment. It was like a gradual. This is getting worse. Seeing that I was not doing. Seeing when going to work, when I stopped going to work, but was saying that's where I was going.
Right.
Pretty but it must have happened before then. There must have been a feeling that it was getting out of hand before then, but it seemed to be a gradual process. And to be fair, when I actually asked for help, I had no intention on that day of doing that.
Right.
It came in the middle of a drinking. Binge.
Right.
Whereas it usually would have led to me maybe blacking out or being in a mess somewhere. Actually got in the middle of it, got sort of halted within me, and I actually went to a phone. It was a phone booth then. Had no mobile or anything. I went to a phone booth in the middle of town and rang, and I don't even know. Can't even remember how I had the number, that I needed to ring. But I rang, so something happened within me. I can't really explain it. That's why to this day, I don't think it was, I think I was under the influence of another source of power rather than alcohol. I think there was something else. It was not, I used to think it was all me. It's all me. It's not. There's just another system that works in this world, and I'm not it. It's not me.
So, what? Okay, well, I mean, you kind of, and that was my next question. So you kind of answered that. So can you sort of put into words what it was that was like the last straw, if it was even like that kind of a scenario? Like why quit when you quit?
Well, to be brutally honest, it wasn't so much the drinking. Well, I knew I was drinking too much, and I was drinking at whatever the wrong time is, but I was drinking when I, should have been working or been with family or whatever. But it wasn't that. It was how I felt about everything. I'd come to a place where I couldn't continue drinking or not drinking. But it wasn't really. I didn't go, oh, I'm an alcoholic. And I don't think I accepted that for a long time until after that I was an alcoholic. I knew that I had a drink problem. I knew that's the thing about this disease, is that even though you might feel suicidal, I'd rather admit that I felt like that than admit I was an alcoholic. It's crackers, isn't it?
Why is that?
It's crackers, isn't it? What addiction will do, what the stigma of being an addict or an alcoholic, the stigma of it, even will outshine the brutal honesty that you would rather say I'm suicidal.
Right.
Work that one out. That's how strong an image is to people, or can be to people. The image, it can be so overpowering that you are seen in the right light, that you're seen by people to be a certain way, that you'll not admit to being an addict or an alcoholic, but you'll quite happily say, think about suicide every day. To me, that's the baffling part of alcoholism.
And that, do you think that's completely social?
completely
social.
What do you mean?
Like, so just because of the
Like,
perception that people would have, or or is it more about actually just not wanting to admit that you have completely succumbed to the substance?
yeah, to a big degree. I think would rather save face than save our asses.
We're good.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think we would. And not just. Again, it goes back to that. I think to a degree, everybody's a bit like that. No, one of my biggest fears, in one of the things that I did in recovery was to try and write down a few things that I thought I was frightened of, with the help of somebody else. And one of them things was public humiliation.
Right.
Was probably my biggest. Being found out for how I felt, or not so much the things I'd done, is how I felt about myself. You know that I was everything that was less. You know, that really deep down, everything that was less. That's how I felt. So.
What do you mean by that?
That's what I didn't want everybody to know. And when I drank, I didn't feel those things. I didn't feel the less. You know, that's why it's not baffling. It's not baffling for me when I look back and see. It don't baffle me at all to know that to accept the fact that I'm an alcoholic. Meaning I can't drink alcohol, basically. That's all. I'm not saying I consider myself as somebody who's recovered, not cured, recovered from this disease on a daily basis. But it doesn't baffle me anymore to realise that, to accept it. Alcoholism doesn't baffle me because I know exactly why I drank. And I know exactly why, in the face of family and friends saying, why don't you stop? You know, you often hear that when family and friends of an alcoholic or an addict will go, why don't you stop? Because you've lost your job, or you've lost your wife or husband, or things are just getting worse. Why wouldn't you stop? And at the time, to the addict or alcoholic, it's as baffling to him as it is to them. But it's only when I look back now and go, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because unless you've got, I always used to say, unless you've got a solution, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me that I need to go somewhere to get it sorted out, that I need help. Don't tell me that unless you've got a solution that's got depth and weight. And if it don't match up to what half a bottle of vodka did when it worked, then I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to hear it.
And because I guess that's another misconception, from external people. And it is the same with like coaching nutrition from the outside. If you've got somebody who is overweight or unhealthy, or if you've got somebody who is getting in trouble with addiction, the solution is not to stop doing it, because like you said, then it's not as simple as obviously stopping. A solution is how do you actually do that? Like, so again, just taking it back to what I know, if someone's overweight, saying to them, well, don't eat as much isn't a solution. Finding a way that they can not eat as much as a process that's actually followable, as steps or principles, then that's obviously
Yeah.
that's a solution, and that's the misconception of people on the outside.
Yeah.
Say stop, like don't drink or don't eat as much or whatever it is. That's not obviously a solution.
Yeah.
That's what should happen as a result of the solution that obviously no one just has, like as a just like can whip it out the back pocket. Okay, so what was the process?
Looking up a little bit, James.
Oh, sorry, mate. I think it'll be all right because we're recording both ends. So, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you just a little bit. It's not as clear as it was before, but go ahead.
Okay. So how what was your process of stopping? Obviously, you've been sober for 30 years now, and it's always, I guess, ongoing. Easier now than before, but getting over the initial hurdles that most or a lot of people stumble on. How did you do that? What did it look like?
Going back to what you said first about you're dead right. You can't bully somebody into getting better, or you can't preach to them. You can't. This is what we said at the beginning, the very beginning. It's all about information and approaching something at a friendly, non confrontational, I suppose, way. The ramifications with alcohol and drug addiction are obviously pretty socially are pretty severe. So there's like a definite. That's the subtle thing, I suppose, about addictions, is that some addictions haven't got that. There's not that crisis point reached with some. And I think with alcoholism and drug addiction, it's a good, in the long run, it's a good thing that it brings you to a definite crisis, whatever that might mean. But basically, pretty much end of the road thing.
Yeah.
Whereas you might have somebody who is definitely addicted to spending too much money. You can go on for a long, long time doing that. You know, I'm not saying that it's still the same addiction. It's still the same thing. But sometimes the ramifications of some can be strung out over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Whereas some addictions are very much pretty brutal. You know, especially drug addiction. Some drug addiction is a brutal and short-term thing for some people, very short-term. But there has to be a recognition. They have to recognise that there's a problem. Without that, it doesn't matter how many people tell them. You know, there has to be some kind of recognition within yourself that something's got to change.
Yeah.
Or the consequences of it, if you don't, you know, pretty severe. And I suppose that might be the same with nutrition, with people that eat too much or don't eat enough or whatever it is. They're just symptoms. They're just the symptoms. The causes and conditions are an inward thing. It's an inward thing. And there has to be a submission of that before this is only how I see it. It's my point of view on it. That's all.
Yeah.
So, but what was
so
the question?
The question there was, what was your process? How did you how have you reached 30? Well, sorry, how did you initially get over the stumbling blocks that others fall over, or that you may have previously fallen on, and then how did you carry on from there?
It was for me, it was a recognition, firstly, a total recognition that I'm done, that I can't, of myself, I can't do anything about it. I just have to surrender. So there had to be a surrendering first for me. And that was a surrender of the alcohol, but maybe not quite a surrender of all my ideas and beliefs and whatever. That's an ongoing I think that's an ongoing process. But I had to be stopped in my tracks by what was happening, and then I got into I phoned for help and got involved with other people that were doing the same thing, and that was for me. That was the most important thing in the beginning for me, is to be amongst other people like myself, basically, and try and immerse myself in that kind of fellowship. That's what I needed in the beginning, and then certain principles that I had to put into my life, whatever that spiritual principles that I applied in my life, just a day at a time, really. That's all it's ever been, is a day at a time, and it's nice to get this kind of sobriety under my belt, but it's not important compared to the only days today I can live in. It's not as important as that. It's just a day. I just do it today. I just try and follow that formula that was introduced to me, the best that I can do it. And then that other system kicks in. There's another system that is not a me, that is higher than me, that when I stop trying to fight anything or anybody, that I just let it wash over me, things happen better than me at the helm. I know in the world, there's a big system of thought that says you're the captain of your own ship, and you make your own choices. And I understand that. But for me, in addiction, there had to be a giving up of that. Giving up that I knew much about anything, because I didn't. And then let these principles, let that system that I have no idea about, and to this day don't want to know anymore. There was a point I did, but I don't. I just know that it works. It works if I stop trying to interfere with it. It's a bit difficult to give you the specifics on that, because there is.
Yeah, but I guess the takeaway is, the big one is the surrendering, and that I just listening to you there, understand that to mean surrendering the idea that you on your own can manage what you've recognized as the problem, right? So because your automatic response, even once you realized it, is, all right, well, I can get this under control, or I know the way. Surrendering that.
Yeah. To manage, it's the sense of self, or the ego, whatever you want to call it, wants to get you out of this. Even after the initial surrendering, when it was stopped, there's still a sense of me that goes, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to manage this better now. We're going to look at this and look at that. And I personally think that we all have that within us. Like, if I did this and I do that and I do this, this result will happen. If I wait for this and wait for that, and have goals and whatever. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things. I only recognise that they're secondary to recognition that I am not sailing this ship. But it looks that way. It's always looked that way, and it can still look that way today. It's a bit like I heard a guy talk about the story about the ant on the log going down the river. From the ant's perspective, he sees the front of that log moving round a bend when he can see that we need to move around the bend here because the torrent is, and then it moves and the ant becomes convinced that it's the driver, but it's all the time it's just been sat on a log and the current has taken it along, but it gives that perception that the ant is the driver.
Yeah.
It's only the story. We use stories to try and point to certain truths, and that's one that I remember. And I identify with that there's a big part of, there's this part of me, or me, like that voice that says, oh, we just need to do this better. And even in recovery, I was doing that for a long time, and not really, there was no settling of any ease within myself. I was still trying to manage things. And then I heard somebody talk about there comes a time when you have to just lay down on the operating table and let the surgeon do the work, and try and resist the urge to pick up the scalpel or to tell him where to make the next incision. And that's where I think we're diametrically opposed to that. Our whole functioning is opposed to that. We're brought up with this conditioning that if you only manage well, you just need to manage well, and everything will be well. For me, as somebody who struggled with alcohol, that was shown to me through these principles, and that all I had to do was follow principles. I didn't have to understand them either. I had to just follow them and apply them in my life, and then see what happened. And that's what's happened. There's been like a release, there's a freedom there that's not me being free. It's like it's almost like recognize it's always been there as well. It's always been there. It's just that what's been in the way is the way that I want to do things, And it's not perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's just I recognise it today as a different system, and I'd rather put my faith in that system than the one that I used to put in, which was me.
Yeah.
I know I always had lots of faith. I just put them in the wrong boat. That's all.
All right, mate. So, and I did want to touch on a little point that you talked about before, which I see a lot. Like, obviously, in my job, I encourage people to make quite big changes in their life, and there's a lot of things that people can be addicted to, and trying to make someone healthy is almost always fighting some kind of addiction. And I find that a problem that people have quite a lot, like, so you was 30 years on the 28th of August, right? That was right, wasn't it? And
yeah, well remembered.
But I don't ever remember you counting it, or
no.
In fact, any time I've ever heard it has come from Mum saying, "Oh, yeah, your dad it was 25 years today," or whatever, just kind of randomly. And obviously for the 30, we made quite a big deal of it. But up until that point, it never really seemed to be a big deal to you how long it had been. And I find it quite, again, it just like yourself, it is only my experience with the people that I've coached or tried to coach, is that whenever they're really hyper focused on how far they've come, then they're not able to really look at where they're going. Especially in terms of the people who shout about it a lot tend to be the people who fall off the wagon, because it seems like they're not doing it for themselves. So when someone says, oh, I've lost this much, I've lost that much, I haven't smoked for this long, I haven't smoked for that long, I haven't had a drink for this long, a drink for that long, is like the telling people about it is the reward for doing it. And when that reward starts to run dry, then they run into a problem, because the reason that they were doing it, or the thing they were doing it for, stops being there as a result of doing it. So I always try to encourage people to obviously keep an eye on their progress and definitely celebrate the successes. But for me, it comes down to reasoning, like what is the actual reason for doing it? And if it is to be externally rewarded, then it almost never, in my experience, ends very well or gets as far as they'd want it to.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are parallels. I know that it was a big thing for me to be a year sober. I think your mother even did a cake and like balloons and stuff. but on the serious note, it was a big thing, and I encourage that in anybody who's 3 months, 6 months, whatever. It's a big thing, and they need to be like encouraged about that. They've done really well. I think it's just natural that in time it's not about, you realise it's not about that. It is a help in the beginning, definitely. But if it's only ever been about that, then you will. I personally think it's a fail thing, because you're not doing it for the right. It's not done for the right.
It's a tool for motivation.
It's definitely a good tool. There's a lot of brilliant tools in the world. There's a lot of good. One old Indian guy, I can't remember his name, old Indian guru, sagey guy, said you have to, sometimes you've got to use a thorn to remove a thorn. But once the thorn's been removed, you don't need the thorn. You don't need the thorn you used to remove the thorn. If you get what I'm saying. So sometimes we need.
One.
So you use a tool to remove something. Once it's been removed, there's no tools needed anymore.
There's more.
You see, Albert Einstein said you can't use a broken tool to remove a broken tool. Which is what the guy's saying is, sometimes in the beginning we need to use things that are going to work, skillful means, and there are skillful means. But once you get through a certain point, you don't need to be doing the same things anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like there are things you need to do in the beginning, and I think after a certain point, with me, when the principles are applied daily for how many days, whatever it takes, everybody's different, but eventually there's a waking up. there's realizing that I was asleep, and then there's a point comes where I've woken up, and all I have to do, then things have been placed in a different place then. And then, but I still have to carry on practicing same principles, that I've weighed. But some things that I did a lot in the early days, I don't necessarily do now,
Yeah.
Some things were rigid, like a rigid set of read such a thing, or maybe pray for 10 minutes a day, or I had a rigid set of things that I would do that helped me. I find today that I don't. They were like props. There were things that helped me along until my spiritual muscles were ready to. It's difficult. It's so hard to point to words, but yeah, birthdays are important. Little celebrations, little milestones are important. But if they're the only thing, you've seen it in nutrition. How many people talk about yo-yo dieting?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yo-yo is exactly what it is. Why do you keep doing the same thing? Why do I lose? Why am I losing? Why do I do so well, lose so much weight? And then the foot's taken off the gas, and they go by, and then go back to the same habits.
Yeah, and we more often than not in nutrition, we'll put that down to superficial motivations. Like usually, when I sit down with a client, we'll have 3 main goals, and one goal will be actionable, so it'll be the objective, what they're actually going to do. The second goal will be the result of the action, which is always quite superficial. Usually quite superficial. So, lose fat, feel better, have more energy, whatever it is. Not superficial, but it's surface usually, and short term. And then the third one is outcome, and that's always the most important one. And it's, if you were 10 pounds lighter, or if you were fit, just able to get up a flight of stairs without being winded, what does it actually do for you? Not just what are you getting for your actions, but how does that affect your life? How does that what does it impress on the rest of your life? So you could have someone sat in front of you who says, oh, I want to I want to be fitter. I feel like I'm not very healthy. And so you go, all right, well, we're going to go to the gym this many times. You're going to eat this. You're going to do that. And the result of that is that you might be able to run 10 miles in 6 months' time. That'd be great. But the outcome is you'll be able to run around with your kids in the park and keep up with, and not be gassed, and join in with moments really that you don't want to miss out on, but you could.
Whereas nothing to do with image. So you're talking about results that have nothing to do with image.
Yeah.
Like I can run 10 miles, which is great, which is really good as a personal thing. But there's a lot of image in that. But running around with your kids or your grandkids on the park is real. That's depth and weight.
Yeah.
That carries depth and, because that is powerful. Who wants to be stuck on a bench seat when you could be? It's within your capabilities, if with enough persistence, to be able to run around with your kids, or your grandkids. That's a lot more powerful than, I'm not denigrating being able to run.
No, yeah, no, but it is. It's just it's levels of goals. That's just levels, and usually, I use both as motivation. It's not that one is motivating and the other one isn't. It's just that one of them is going to motivate you, when you're in the gym, when it's hard, you know, when you're on the road running or whatever it is, and the other one is going to keep you coming back.
Yeah.
You know, it makes
Yeah.
it, you know, it's the ultimate kind of reward.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And obviously that's the results of being unhealthy are obviously just as bad, but probably not quite as acute as addiction. You know, you're not likely to lose your job, or as likely to lose your family, or do something very compromising just because you're overweight or just because you're unfit. But I guess the principles sort of do still apply. That the result of quitting drinking would be that you know, keep your job, you know, or yeah, let's say that, keep your job. But the outcome of it is that obviously the rest of your life is just going to be better than it would have been, most likely. You know, so there's obviously levels.
Yeah, you can't say what would have been or what wouldn't have been, because we don't know.
Yeah.
But you can only look back. I can only look back at my life and look at the family that are in my life and the people that are in my life, and know that was all to do with that was to do with having a crisis in my life and recognizing that, and then giving into a process. And that's it's a bit of a leg up, really, in the long run, because I was forced into it. Whereas I suppose, like you said, there's so many people that they don't know when there's a heart attack around the corner waiting to happen, but they don't know that. That's maybe not going to motivate them, you know. Maybe it will. But yeah, it's got to be some depth and weight in the method, you know.
Yeah.
And you've got to there's got to be a recognition that you need to change your lifestyle. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago when I was walking around with your mum, because as you know, I've had sciatica for a long time, but I always have known as well. You talked about bullshit when we talked about bullshit earlier. Like, I bullshit myself about it lots, about what I could do. I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. But the biggest part of the bullshit is that I know that if I did enough work physically on my core muscles that support my frame, it would ease my sciatica. I know that. See, I know that's clear to me. Yeah. It's not rocket science, is it?
No.
But has it motivated me to do that? Not yet.
No. So well, and maybe even you could say, you know, we could say, okay, well, you know what the problem is. You know what the actionable process for a solution is. You know the results. You know the superficial results as well, is that you won't be in pain anymore. But you know, maybe it's worth taking some time to think about the outcome, i.e., sitting on a park bench when your grandkids are all running around, and those little magical micro moments that could be had, potentially not being had. That's powerful. You know, and I think for anyone who is in that position with whatever the quote unquote problem is, it's helpful always to have that in mind, to think about the outcome and not just the superficial result. Because like you say, most of us know what we're supposed to do, or what the issue is, or where to find the help. But it's just the motivation's not powerful enough. Not,
yeah,
I suppose, yeah.
To outweigh the consequences.
Yeah.
You know what I know what the consequences. Intellectually, I know what the consequences would be, but the bullshit within me will justify it one more day that I don't do. You know, and that's fairly and squarely my responsibility or
accountability. Yeah.
I'm accountable for that. Nobody else can be accountable for that. But it has to be cleared. But the bullshit has to be cleared away first. You know.
Yeah. Got to surrender. What you say?
Yeah. Surrender to that, and that. Yeah, it's another point in my life where there has to be a surrender, and then a set of working steps from that to change that situation. You know, so I could every week I could phone you or text you or Zoom meet with you and say, right, James, what can I do? And you could tell me all the right plans, all the nutrition, all the physical stuff I could do. Wouldn't mean anything unless I do something about it.
Yeah, unless you want it.
And that's the biggest part of your job. It's not so much the training, is it, or nutrition? It's motivating people.
Yeah.
It's helping motivate them to get them going. You know, keep
definitely.
that motivation going.
Yeah, it's managing the process to be doable for one, and then like you say, it's encouraging people to find the right motivation for it, because there's no it's the same. There's no way you can't bully someone into it. It's got to come from them, but and this could, you might have a good bit of input on this as well. As a coach, I'm always thinking about how can I encourage somebody to find that motivation, because I can't make them do it. I've just got to find a way for them to discover that they really want to do it. So if you knew somebody who you thought was getting into trouble with alcohol, then for a fact you can't just tell them they have to do it. How do you go about helping them to see it for themselves, if that's even possible?
Yeah, it's quite a big one, that, because it's all them. In a way, it's all them. So there has to be, they have to have their own submission. I won't make them, they have to be in that place. So they've got to be ready. They've got to be ready to take a course of action that they wouldn't normally take. So I would only ask them to do exactly what I did, and what somebody sat down to me and said, if you want, basically they said to me, if you want what I've got, then do what I do. That specifically, principles wise or steps wise, or what, do what I do. But the biggest part is getting them into the starting blocks.
Yeah.
And there's many false starting blocks, and you don't know which ones they're in. Are they just in one that's going to get them? Are they just in the starting blocks that's going to get the boss off the back or the wife off the back? Are they doing it just to get clear of some trouble?
Yeah.
And so so if somebody comes along, you don't know really where they're at with that. You to sit down with them and get a degree of it. Usually, the more battered they are, and beat up, the better the chance they're going to do what you ask them to do. And that's, what I can only speak from my experience. So I only ever tell people, if I'm working or trying to help anybody, that this is what I did. If you want to do that, I'm willing to help. But if you're not, then it's not I don't want to help. I can't help you. You can't help somebody who don't want to help, who don't want my help.
Yeah. And is there, because I think if I was somebody, if I knew somebody who I really thought was in trouble, my main thing would not be I'm concerned that I can't help them. It would be that I'm going to say something wrong, or there's obviously a lot of things that are not going to be helpful that people probably think they're being helpful. Is there any just kind of any warnings that you would give to just say, if you do know somebody that you think is struggling or in trouble with it, then don't do this. Like, don't, some things that people commonly do but probably shouldn't, to try and help the people.
Yeah. The first thing the thing that I struggled with for a long time was I thought I was responsible for what came out of my mouth, especially if we're talking with addicts or alcoholics, that there was a feeling that I'm responsible. So if they don't get it, I've given I gave them the wrong advice or whatever. It's not advice. And then I realised that I'm not. That's my ego. That's still my ego, thinking that I have got power, some kind of power, and I haven't got any. And then I could relax and go, look, this is what I did. For me personally, this is what I did. I'm willing to help you to do those things, to guide you through those things, the best that I can. And do you know, in my experience, the minute they're sincere and they actually start doing them, you see them change straight away. You can see them changing straight away. You can see their outlook to life changing. It's like they just change, not overnight, but there's definitely a change. And that was only the result of trying to be three things: honest, open-minded, and willing. Just honest, open-minded, and willing. And to be fair, that's all I was told for a long time. Steve, just be honest, open-minded, willing. In fact, I got bored of people telling me. I got bored of it because I wanted to know more. I wanted to know the ins and outs of things, but how does it really work, this, or how does, and the wisdom that I was getting was, it's not for you to, you'd have to be concerned with that. Just be honest in your daily activity, your daily dealings with people. Be as honest as you can be with them. Be open-minded to everything. Don't discount anything. Be open to it. So you become teachable. And I realized that I wasn't for a long time. I was not teachable. I had my way of looking at things, and that was it. And that stopped me. That stopped a lot of information coming in. And then probably most important was willing. Be willing to do the things that you don't understand. It might not make any sense to you, but be willing just to do them. And then see, because, the guy, there's been a few people, one guy in particular said to me, he said, I promise you, if you just those three things, on a daily basis, you'll come out of this. You'll just start to come out of it. and you won't understand how it's how, but you will understand it's just those three principles: honesty, open mind, and willing. Which sounds really simple. It's a simplistic way, but life really is that simple. Like, it really is that simple. Again, and that just got me connected with something that was greater than me. I believe it's just something that was greater than me. And it didn't matter what I called it. Don't matter what I call it. It's just something that works. That brings that that ease and comfort. Just an ease and comfort in life, rather than just full of feelings, negative feelings. You know, I'm not saying that I don't get negative feelings, and I do. You know, it's just that they don't swamp my life. They wash up sometimes on the shore, but they don't swamp. I'm not swamped in them. You know. So yeah, honesty, open mind, and willing. I think that's the same with it in anything. In anything. You know,
yeah.
How many? Just the principle of being. If you're talking to somebody about nutrition, and you say, look, here's something that's really good for you. You know, might contain certain vitamins or whatever, or different things that I don't understand. But if I'm in a position that I'm open-minded, I will go, do you know what? I'll give that a try. But the old me would go, yeah, he's saying that, but I've heard that before, and like just constantly got an opinion on everything. Like, I'm going to nullify everything everybody says, and it's not a wanting to do that. It's like built-in, you know. Oh, I'll check that through my own, you know, because I know, not best, but you know, I'm an intelligent bloke. And the greatest thing to be, for me, the greatest thing today is to go, hey, do you know what? I know nothing. I don't know nothing about it. Because from that position, that hey, I don't know, mate. What are you talking to me about vitamins and what? I don't know. But there's a, do you know what? But I'll give it a go and see what happens. And if it works, it works. I feel better about it and feel better, you know. And it's an attitude. It's an attitude. And the attitude is open-mindedness, you know, or honesty. Now, who wants to be rigorously honest about how they're feeling or how they look at things or whatever? That's really hard if you've got an image that you want to live up to. Yeah. If you've got an image you want to live up to, it's pretty difficult to be honest, because you're going to be seen for what you are. But for that to be wiped away, and the image to be wiped away, you know, my mate used to say it's a bit like standing there in the street with your pants around your ankles, without the urge to go, oh, I need to pull them up quick. You know, it's like, pants around my ankles again. Better pull them up. You know, like there's no, I'm not desperate to pull them up, but it's like, I suppose I should really, because I've got to live in a world that, you know, I have to get arrested.
Could get done here.
I could get done here.
Yeah.
But it's like what I'm trying to say is, if you're not trying to protect an image, then honesty is easy. Because you've got there's nothing to protect or lose or gain, or it's just, like to live like that, there's no, I know the effort that I put into trying to make, you know, like blowing that image up every day. Keep it going, keep it up there. And then somebody'd like come near me with a pin. Oh no, stay away from me. And the next day, and why not just let it go and then see See that? Hang on, I'm not dead.
Just a little bit deflated.
I'm not dead. I'm not dead. Nobody's abandoned me. I haven't been rejected. Because it's all based on that.
And again, obviously, it's easy enough to sort of laugh at that, but
Yeah.
but it is, again, like we touched on before, it is a massive part of our culture, especially now with social media. We're all comparing ourselves to the highlight reel of other people's lives, and plus social pressure to have a certain image. So yeah, but again, I think you could probably put that down as an addiction, being addicted to being seen in a certain way or having a certain social status.
Yeah. Definitely,
yeah. That can obviously, just as in the same way as any other addiction, can be broken down through process and
in that it's killing you in the same way. It's going to kill you in the same way, because you're going to spend the whole of your life, if it's not recognized, if that's not recognized within you, anybody, then why? Then you're living a life. You're going to be living a life continually, trying to prop that up. No. How many times they talk about people in their old age become like little children again?
Yeah.
You know, like they're just like little kids in a playground, but they're now in their 70s and 80s or whatever. And they say you can see that in a lot of people that get to that stage, because during their life, it's not been dropped. That image has not been dropped. It's never been seen through. You know, not that it's not their fault. You can see maybe circumstances or whatever, but that image has never been dropped. Now you're in a body that's frail, that's dependent on other people, and maybe a mind as well, you know. And then that's double whammy, because you physically got to rely on other people. If your image has not been by that time, it's going to be hell. It's going to be hell. It's only how I see it.
All right. I think we're going to wrap it up, mate.
Okay, mate.
Sean's going to kill me because he's going to have a chunk of editing to do. But I just wanted to get sort of your last thoughts. Obviously, where this subject came up because of Stoptober. What are your thoughts on that Stoptober?
On the Stoptober thing, from an alcoholic point of view, it would just be try and have a look within yourself. Are you stopping because it's October? You're gonna make it. You know, it's only got to be a good thing for everybody to stop drinking for a month. It's not on my radar, that kind of thing. But I can see the importance of it. Which one of the physical things that I was going to say earlier, but I forgot to say, or it just went by, was that I noticed that when I stopped drinking physically, that I craved sugar. I craved sugar because alcohol, especially beer, lager and stuff, there's like so much sugar in the lager and beer. And I didn't used to like puddings. I didn't used to like puddings when I was drinking because I was getting plenty of sugar. Then when I stopped drinking, I loved my apple pie and ice cream and stuff like that. But they did recommend to us that there's nothing wrong in having a old chocolate bar here and there, and try and keep the sugar levels up, because apparently that's one thing that we do miss, when you stop drinking. So, obviously you'll know all about that. But there'll be a lot of people out there for stopping drinking for October, like smoking as well. That they, maybe not try and give up two things at once.
Yeah.
But definitely sugar. I used to eat a lot of sugar, like chocolate and puddings and stuff like that.
I didn't realise that. Yeah, that was like a common thing.
I'm glad you can't tell too much from Zoom.
Still loves his apple pie and ice cream.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, anybody that can pack it in for a month.
Yeah, I think it's like you say. I had obviously an idea of what you would say in answer to that question. In terms of, as an alcoholic, like you say, what's your reason for doing it? It's just because it's stopped over. But for those listening, I like say, I've only ever heard really good things about Stoptober or Dry January or whatever it is.
Yeah.
People, the main thing is, and obviously not talking now from an alcoholic's perspective, just talking from most people, is that they just don't realize the impact it has on them psychologically and physiologically. When they're just having, a glass of wine a night, or a couple of glasses of wine, or a can of lager or whatever after work, how much of a difference it makes to just stop doing that for a month. But you obviously you don't realize, you don't see the negative because it's quite gradual, but you see the positives when you stop, because in something like Stoptober, it's so sudden. But yeah, I think from a health, obviously, perspective, it's weird. And even if for someone who was kind of, it felt like they were in a little bit of trouble with it, and this was going to be an opportunity where a lot of people around them are going to be doing the same thing, so that's also quite helpful. But you can never lose anything by just doing it, like just stopping for a month, seeing what happens.
It'd be it's really positive thing if you can use it as a looking at how I feel, looking at how I physically feel, looking at the kind of thoughts that I have as well, psychologically. We know that alcohol is a depressive, and people go, what? Some people say, well, that's not in my experience. It always lifted my spirits, and that's the case. What it means is it depresses the emotions that you're most swamped with. That's why, they say well-balanced, happy people usually don't have trouble with alcohol. They can take it or leave it, kind of thing. It helps them relax and whatever. But if you're depressive to start with, or negative to start with, then it depresses those emotions, which makes you feel the opposite to it.
I've never thought about it in that way.
So that's why it doesn't really make any sense, because an alcoholic will say, well, it doesn't make any sense, well, it's probably because you're probably not the most upbeat person in the morning when you wake up, and then you have a drink, and it makes you feel different, because it's emotions that you
it's not bringing them up, it's just taking away the negatives.
Depresses whatever that is. I didn't understand that. In my own experience, that makes perfect sense, you know. Which is why, you know, why it was the mornings that were the trouble, not the drinking. It was the sobriety.
Yeah.
Was the trouble. That's when I felt flat and depressed and not right. You know, and then so it goes from there. But my hat's off to anybody who can do this for October. You know, use it as an experience to have a look. Have a look. And if you're kind of the kind of person that maybe feels a bit lighter in themselves at the end of October for it and better for it, it can only be a good thing, you know, if it makes you think, oh, maybe I am drinking a bit. Because there are those out there that are not alcoholics, they just drink too much, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always. It's a learning experience. It'll be a learning experience, however.
Yeah.
You keep an open mind. So keep an open mind.
Open-mindedness, yeah.
Mindedness.
All right, mate. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
It's not a problem. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really good.
If you've been affected by any of the topics discussed in this interview, please do take a look at the links in the description and the show notes that might be able to help. Now, we'd love to hear about your stories and your experiences. Have you gone sober? Maybe for life, or maybe for the odd month for something like Dry January or Sober October. Or maybe you've simply cut back on alcohol and noticed a positive difference. If you're listening as a podcast, send an email to sean@nutri-iq.net and use the subject line podcast to let us know your story. That's SHAUN@NUTRI-IQ.net. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, let us know down below. So, thanks for tuning in to Nutri-iQ Radio this week. If you're listening as a podcast and you haven't already, if you could leave a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic, and you can even do it right in the app. Any reviews you leave, I'd love to give you a shout out on the show, and of course, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you could give the video a like, that would be a massive help, because it lets them know these shows are something people enjoy, so they're more likely to show them to other people. And finally, if you want to follow us around social media, make sure you like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram at Nutri-iQ without the dash, follow us on Twitter at Nutri-iQ official, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Nutri-iQ TV. See you next week.